Let's talk about the Burkini ban. A burkini is this ridiculous bathing suit which is supposed to give Muslim women the chance to go bathing in a public bath or beach without having to uncover their hair. France as such has throughout the past years consistently enforced its distinctive secularism for which it is known throughout Europe. Wearing religious symbols in schools and public buildings can get you into trouble, and if you work in public service it is not allowed to wear religious symbols. This includes everything from Islamic headscarves to Christian crucifixes to Jewish kippahs to Sikh headdresses.
Well, good for France for keeping its consistency. No religion can claim that they are being discriminated against. It's basically all religion. Before I go further into this video, I want to mention that this is a more complicated issue than one might think. So in this critique of Kraut's video, I will try my best to be as specific as I can to what I will be addressing. France has been criticized for as long as I can remember for its policy with the commonly so-called Burqa ban, which, as Kraut will point out, includes headscarves that doesn't cover the entire body, such as the hijab. While I do think that France has exaggerated its policy with regards to displaying religious symbols, the point I will be making is that religion cannot ask for special treatment. So from this particular perspective, I actually agree with many of the French burqa ban in practice. But let's go on.
There is, however, a problem I have with this, and that is that I do not believe this strict French style of secularism to be right. The separation of church and state does indeed mean that religious doctrines must be kept out of politics and public institutions, and also means that the state is not allowed to enforce any kind of religious doctrine. But more crucially and more important, the separation of religion and state exists to manifest and clearly outline the individual citizen's right to express their religious views and to hold their religious views without fear of recrimination by the state.
This is kind of a dangerous slippery slope path that you go down into. What would exactly fall under individual's expression of religious freedom that should be allowed? Every country has its traditions regarding displaying respect in especially governmental institutions. For example, in public schools in America, you're not allowed to wear hats or caps while you are in classrooms. Once I wore a Santa Claus hat while I was in class in high school during the holiday seasons, and I was told by the teacher that I cannot wear that. Why couldn't I complain that this is my individual display of religious freedom? Similarly, in public schools, there are such things as dress codes, which means that there are certain things that you cannot wear. Where do you draw the line? It's very difficult.
Yet despite what you may think about this, a person who chooses to wear a veil has the right to do so in any free society. And this isn't just a matter concerning Muslims. The rights that are guaranteed through the separation of church and state are not just guaranteed to them. They outline that all religions, legally and socially, are supposed to have an equal standing and to be treated equally before the law.
Once again, I'm not very familiar with the details of the French policy. If the policy states that you can only wear your religious symbol in your private safe space, such as your home, your friends or relatives' home, or your designated religious congregation, and anywhere that's even remotely public, you cannot do so, then that is indeed exaggerated and it would be a bad law. However, once again, being treated equal means that religious people cannot ask for special treatment. If there are rules in an institution regarding dress codes, and most dress codes are arbitrary, they have to be followed by everybody or by nobody. Using religion or culture as an excuse is in effect asking for special treatment.
These rights apply equally for all religious and non-religious groups, which means that if you let a law like this pass through without any oppositions, you are putting yourself at risk of arbitrary government measures against you because of your religious beliefs or your lack thereof. Because in the end, letting something like this pass means that you are giving your stamp of approval to the state to take action against people for exercising their rights.
If you're saying that there should be absolutely no such thing as a dress code anywhere, that people should just be able to wear whatever the fuck they want, then there's nothing I can say against that. So you would have to agree with somebody I know who literally said that if somebody shows up in school completely naked, he or she should be allowed to do that, because you could make the argument that the state insisting the student covers himself or herself modestly enough to be fit to attend school is a slippery slope that eventually will result in an authoritarian state. The person who shows up naked can even claim that this is his religion, right? To not be covered in clothes because, let's say, he's enacting Adam and Eve before they were discovered that they were naked, because he wants to be naked in the eyes of God or something. So forcing him to wear clothes is actually oppressing his religious freedom. If you agree with this crowd, that's fine. But if you don't, then there is a line that needs to be drawn. Where will you draw that line then?
As such, I cannot approve of a burkini ban. The burkini is not a security risk to society, and honestly, I believe that letting them wear it will over the long term have the secularizing process that we need.
I'm not certain that this burkini ban, which essentially is a spin-off of the controversial burqa ban that's been talked about for a while now, really stemmed from the attempt to control the Muslim population and their religion. Although it's true that the banning of religious symbols in public came from demanding the respect of the secular state of France, every country has something similar that it's at least de facto requiring people to participate in at least some public institutions because of the country's culture, tradition, and history. So a part of it might simply be something similar to a dress code thing, and that was largely how it was practiced. Again, like everywhere else. But it could be that because of the incoming Muslim population, that are the people who tended to stir up the most trouble by refusing to do what Romans do when in Rome. It escalated into more and more restricting, especially for them, as a retaliation. I personally do not support this, but thinking it as purely a freedom of expression problem is inadequate, to say the least. So, in the case of whether there should be a burkini ban, I think of it instead like this. Are there people who go swimming covered from head to toe, like the Muslim women who wear bikinis? Well, yes. The suits worn by divers or surfers, for example, especially women who have extremely long hair and have to wear a swimming cap, these swimsuits protect you from the cold or pressure in the ocean water. So in this particular case, I would agree that there shouldn't be a burkini ban, because it is not asking for special treatment, and by banning them, you are indeed discriminating against these Muslim women.
Similar things also have to be said about the proposed burqa and niqab ban in Germany. For starters, I would like you all to take a closer look through all the variants of Islamic headdresses for women. There's the hijab, chimar, chador, niqab, and burqa. Chador, niqab, and burqa are those that cover the entire body. Chador you will most likely find in Iran, where it will be worn by the most religious. Niqab is something that you have probably seen before, as it comes out of the Arabian Gulf and is a product of Wahhabi Islam. If you see one of these, there are only three possibilities. The person wearing this is from the Arab Gulf states, the person wearing this is a Wahhabi Islamist, or the person wearing this is forced into wearing it by her Wahhabi Islamist family. And the burqa, as we all know, comes out of Afghanistan and is a wretched and disgusting rag used in a barbaric way as a tool of oppression during the rule of the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Let's just talk about public schools with respect to wearing these. The hijab and the chador are debatable because they do not cover up the face, so people can still recognize you. Even though some people have stated that if you cover your hair, it makes it harder, but I don't find this to be a particularly strong argument. The only argument that can be discussed is whether wearing these is akin to wearing a hat or cap in school, which at least in the US, again, public schools are not allowed. And the arbitrary rule that you cannot wear a hat or cap or any kind of circlet on the head in school is to show respect to your teacher as the authority and also respect to your classmates. A circlet of any form, including hats and caps, used to be symbols of power and authority, so wearing them is reminiscent of a person who thinks that he or she is better than everybody else. Similarly, in China, For example, students are not allowed to wear jewelry of any kind. So this is why if you look closely at Chinese women and girls, especially those who are recent immigrants, most likely than not, you'll notice that their ears are not pierced, unlike some European countries where the mothers pierce their daughters' ears as young as age 4. The arbitrary ban of jewelry wearing in China is based on the idea that wearing them is putting on a display of riches and acting 分心 or division of the heart. When a student's obligation is to respect his or her fellow classmates wherever they come from and to focus on their studies. From these respects, the fact that in France in particular, students are not allowed to wear religious symbols as showing respect to the establishment of the secular government because of their history is not any different or special than anywhere else.
Now, let me throw out a number that might surprise you. As far as we know, there are no Muslim women in Germany who wear the burqa. And concerning the niqab, guess how many women in Germany are estimated to wear one of those? 8,000. At best, 10,000. That number is so small, it is neglectable. This really is a small segment within the wider Muslim population of Germany.
Argument from numbers is never a solid argument of any kind. Just because there are very few numbers of people who are asking for special treatment does not mean that they should somehow be granted the special treatment.
More to the point, I have to agree with the president of the German Police Union when he said that a burqa and niqab ban would be pointless from a security perspective, and he supports it as a social policy measure. Fact is that women who would wear the niqab in Germany are either Wahhabist extremists themselves or are forced by their Wahhabist extremist family members to wear it, meaning that if you wear that rag, chances are that your online activities, your mosque and other activities you engage in are probably already being surveilled by the German security services.
So let me get this straight. The discussion regarding banning a burqa or niqab because of security risk is because wearing them prevents identification. Again, students are not allowed to wear a, for example, balaclava to school. Doesn't matter how cold it is. Not only because he or she won't be identified when the teacher is, let's say, taking the roll call, but also because it will scare his fellow classmates, as it tends to be something that only a thug would wear. Both the niqab and the burqa are very similar to a balaclava from this perspective, so of course it is a security risk. If you're saying that, oh, but those who are wearing them are being watched anyways, so why bother? That sounds like special pleading to me.
More importantly, there have already been precedent cases and incidents that show the consequences of wearing the niqab in Germany. A woman who sued the German state for cutting her unemployment benefits turned up in court in a niqab. After refusing to remove it or to show her face, the judge found her in contempt of court, which was probably a big contributor to her losing the case.
I completely agree with this. If a person shows up in a fucking suit of armor covering from head to toe, he or she would be demanded to remove the fucking suit of armor, or he or she would lose the case as well. When you're talking about in court, identification is extremely important, and everybody abides by this rule. Otherwise, a woman can attend court in place of another woman, and nobody will fucking know.
Women who turn up at banks in a niqab were told by the bank management to either remove it or to leave the bank.
I agree again. In banks, you have to show identification. You will be sometimes even asked to take off your cap or hat for that purpose. I literally know somebody who argued that the banks should provide special rooms for these Muslim women for private identification. You know, a few years ago, that was a proposed solution, by the way. Now, somebody replied to her, okay then, my grandmother is from another religion which also requires covering from head to toe. She demands another room just for her. And after this person replied, yeah, sure, give her another room. You know, he then answered, okay, my great aunt is from another religion that requires covering. She wants a room for herself as well. You know, it's not surprising that at that point, this person who supported the room argument blocked her ear and moved on to something else entirely.
A girl who applied for a school in a hijab but then turned up at school in a niqab was kicked out of that school, and when her parents sued the school, they lost the case.
Absolutely. If you can somehow apply to schools while wearing a fucking mask, people can commit fraud in applications. A genius father or mother clearly applied to, let's say, Harvard using his or her son's name, so the son gets into the school with the father's accomplishments.
A woman in a niqab who was called to court as a witness and refused to take her niqab off in the witness stand was certified to have a lack of credibility as a witness by the judge ruling over the case.
As would anybody else wearing anything that prevents facial identification, especially as a witness, same as everywhere.
Women have been denied university applications if they applied in a niqab and refused to take it off.
A person wearing a suit of armor would also be denied application.
Women who started turning up in niqabs for work have been fired.
When I was working in the Academic Research and Advising Center in my university, I was told by the coordinator that my shorts were too short for work, and if I continued to wear them, I would have been fired. Similarly, many companies require a dress code, that you're not allowed to wear sneakers or jeans to work. You'll be fired. If you turn up to an interview wearing jeans and sneakers, the interview will be called off. Companies have their own policies, and it's in their right to make them. I cannot wear a kimono or a Chinese qipao to work in especially prestigious companies who are especially strict with this kind of thing. Many companies have uniforms, and you're supposed to abide by the rules of your company. I could go on and on. Once again, you cannot ask for special treatment just because of your religion.
In yet another court case where a woman decided to turn up in niqab and refused to take it off, the judge simply decided to rule that she was simply not present as long as she refused to take off the niqab.
Again, as would a person who shows up wearing a suit of armor.
And in case you might not know, even though it should be obvious, police as well as security officers have the right to demand from a person to take off any Islamic headdress.
Or, presumably, ask them to leave the premise.
And I have to honestly ask, what is the point of such a law? What is the point of the law that is being proposed? Would it really serve any kind of purpose?
The point is, once again, that one cannot ask for special treatment just because of your religion or your culture or your beliefs. Either you should be allowed to wear whatever you want, or there are rules. There are guidelines depending on the situation. And I think when it comes to situations where facial identification is critical, I think it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Honestly, if you ask me, both the Burkini ban in southern France as well as the proposed Burqa and niqab ban in Germany are nothing more but virtue signaling, or even just nothing more but petty attempts at trying to distract the public from issues with more relevance.
Just because there are bigger issues doesn't mean that we should turn a blind eye to a religion asking for special rules regarding certain things that we might think of as minor things, simply because it's a slippery slope. Either everything is okay, or there are rules that everyone must follow. You can discuss whether the rules are good or bad within certain contexts. For example, other than the bikini ban, I also tend to think that it's wrong for them to ban the niqab or burqa in public sidewalks or parks, because there could be people, children for example, wearing masks to play a game or putting on a play or an act for public amusement. You can also wear a suit of armor in public parks. So then, for the sake of equality, ultra-conservative Muslim women should be allowed to wear a burqa or niqab. The context is important, and what gives freedom is often not about how free of a choice you have, but about equality. It's about setting up good rules and principles and expect everybody to stick to it.